I'm Heather Mitchell, and my partner is Kathy Johnson, and we did the Odwalla and E. coli crisis that happened in '96. So today we will be going over the history of Odwalla Incorporated, their business profile, the E. coli discovery and crisis management, and the timeline of everything that happened. Odwalla brand of juices and food bars have been around for over 2 decades. In the 1980s, when founder and entrepreneur Greg Steltenpohl and his partners Jerry Percy and Bonnie Bassett were selling fresh fruit out of Greg's Volkswagen, they never imagined the notoriety that would follow them. His concept was simple. He wanted to incorporate ideas of environment sustainability with creative community-based marketing and incorporate employee empowerment. In the 80s, organic food and eco-friendly concepts were not a concern to many, let alone the concept of mixing juices and vegetables together to make delicious and healthy beverages. One important process that Odwalla had was that they did not pasteurize their juices because they felt it would produce the best taste and health benefits. To Steltenpohl, it was easy. No preservatives, no polluting, and no processing. It was just as easy as that, which would prove to be a major mistake in the later years. Their business profile was that it generated 1 to 2 million a year in revenue. It consisted of over 1,000 employees, and their company distributes their products to over 5,000 locations, including supermarkets, natural food stores, and convenience stores. 30 states currently sell this product, and it consists of a COO, a CFO, and general manager. Odwalla is a parent company also to Minute Maid, and it became incorporated in 1985. After only 5 years in the business, their profits rose 30% annually. Their popularity continued to gain momentum after the organic popularity hit the grocery stores. Society also began to take responsibility for their own health, and Odwalla was there to promote their uniqueness. This picture here is just a structure of all the major food marketers that process organic products such as Hershey Foods, Heinz, Conagra, General Mills, and you'll see Coca-Cola down here at the bottom with Odwalla associated with it. It was ranked number 13 in the nation according to the food processing chart. And since Coca-Cola was such a large brand distributor, they were able to use their pull as a leading soda maker to generate publicity and consumer popularity. Now comes the E. coli discovery and crisis. So on October 7th, 1996, Odwalla produces juices using apples that were tainted with the E. coli O157/H7. The apples were bruised and contaminated. Due to the non-pasteurization process that they used in their juices, it spread rather quickly through most of the West Coast. Health officials linked the E. coli outbreak to Odwalla on October 30th of 1996. That's when they notified Odwalla. And 10 out of the 13 cases in Washington alone were linked to the Odwalla fruit juices. And there was one death. The victim was only 16 months old. So let's talk about crisis management. What is crisis management? It's a systematic attempt to avoid organizational crisis or to manage those crises in the events that occur. According to our reading that we had in this class, Tim Combs defined the crisis management type as the different crises which can necessitate the use of different crisis team members. It emphasizes different stakeholders and warrant different response strategies. One of the main issues was the technical error accidents. So that's what this would be categorized as. And that's when technology utilized or supplied by the organization, which was Odwalla, fails and results in a defect or potentially harmful to the product. According to what we know, the strategies that would be used would be based on the crisis itself, and it would require those different responses, such as what team members, what stakeholders, how they would respond to that crisis. Now, the strain of E. coli that was used was the O strain, the O antigen. In the O strain, there's approximately 171 antigens in those. As we know, there are various strains of E. coli, and the H47 strain, the H7 strain is predominant normally in the intestines of cows. Now, it's predicted what happened was that some of the apples that were on these farms were on cow farms, and therefore releasing fecal matter onto the fruit, which caused the E. coli. Immediately after Odwalla was notified of this, they recalled 13 juice flavors and pulled them from the shelves. It was apple, blackberry fruit shake, mango tango, super protein, banana smoothie, raspberry smoothie, sea monster, mo beta, femme fatale, strawberry sea monster, superfood, serious ginseng, and deepened peach. Unfortunately, the apple juice itself was used to make many of these juices, as you can see. And part of their crisis management plan, they were able to narrow down the problem and rectify it immediately. Now, with the crisis management, one of the most important tactics in a PR crisis is to acknowledge the error, acknowledge a problem. Not only did Odwalla do that, but they jumped into action to correct it. They did have a spokesperson, but also the CEO, Stephen Williamson, was immediately there and had ordered the total recall of all products, not only containing apple, but containing carrot as well. They also accepted full responsibility for that, and they went on several interviews acknowledging the error, apologizing, and accepting responsibility for what happened. Unfortunately, most of the victims in this were children. There was many children hospitalized, and he promised to pay their medical bills. Internally, he enhanced the internal communication, conducting regular conference calls with their employees to address any issues that arose. The next day after the recall, Odwalla had set up a website for concerned consumers. This was a separate website from their normal website, and this would allow consumers to address any complaints, problems, or issues that arose. So from our reading book, we had discussed the Jones and Chase issues management model, and this really is an ideal model to use because, as you see here, it goes in a very much a circular motion where you have the problem, the issue identification, the issue monitoring, and then once the problem is addressed and monitored, it's analyzed. There's also strategic options. How are they going to fix this? Implementation and evaluation. That was another significant benefit that Odwalla did to help change the damage that had already been done, and this really saved their image. So let's talk about the time frame. October 7th, 1996, the apples with the E. coli strain 0157 were used to create the juices for the company. On October 30th, the health officials notified Odwalla of the E. coli contamination. The CEO, Mr. Williamson, immediately issued a recall. 24 hours after the recall, a PR firm was hired by Odwalla to assess the crisis and investigate it. Williamson begins his TV interviews to address the issue. On November 8th of 1996, 16-month-old Anna Gimstad died from the E. coli bacteria. After most of the contaminant of the outbreak, after the containment of the outbreak, there were a total of 60 reported cases, mostly toddlers, with 14 hospitalized and 1 death. There were more than 20 civil lawsuits filed. Odwalla paid over $15 million in fines. $1.5 million in fines, with an additional $6.5 million that was spent on their own to create internal teams that mobilized through various parts of the region to help maintain and assess the problem. By December 5th of 1996, Odwalla was able to integrate apple juice back into their recipes, but by then sales had dropped 90%, with stock decreasing by 30%. 34%. So what did Odwalla do to help rectify the problem? Well, they did several things. They immediately recalled and apologized for the terrible error. There was an enhancement of communication, not only externally but internally within the company. And they implemented what is now became known as flash pasteurization. So they implemented a pasteurization program, whereas before they didn't have one. One of the most notable actions from the CEO was to immediately begin his quarterly meetings with his employees. He wanted to make sure that any issues that arose were addressed, and I think I talked about that earlier. So in conclusion, Odwalla was able to not only rebuild the brand name by practicing good crisis management procedures and taking action for the damage that was done, but they also initiated a lot of programs that helped prevent this from ever happening again. They spent millions of dollars in lawsuits and were also able to rebuild the trust of its stakeholders, consumers, and the public image through solid, ethical, and morally sound choices. The company's strong values and self-proclaimed social responsibility spoke volumes and have once again become a household name. CEO Greg Williamson, after the end of the lawsuits, went on air and gave a statement that said, "Our sympathy will forever be extended to the individuals and the families who are affected by this crisis." So thank you for listening to this.